Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about architecture. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what is the purpose of an architecture team in a software engineering company when engineering teams can manage their own architecture? Well, they're basically there to find ways of making themselves useful. And that is incidentally exactly the thing that architects are doing, staff engineers are doing, community drivers are doing, all these other sorts of, well, as I like to call it, middle management roles. And basically what I'm saying is that once you get to a point where you're no longer defined just by terms such as a software developer or similar sorts of things, where you concretely are doing something that is directly tied to the deliverables of a given team or something like that, then you're in that bracket, like your engineering managers and so forth and so forth. You have some sort of responsibility, but for you guys who may not have been at that level all that much, it's good to know that in essence, this is where I argue most of the mistakes within an organization is happening, because you're basically just hiring people based on what you think that you need, and then hoping that they're going to fulfill some sort of role. There's more middle management in that, like more middle managers that are basically doing nothing. That is my argument. Then there are people who are actually doing things, because as I've said before to you guys, uh, the average middle management type of character don't actually provide all that much value. Some of them are very useful, but a lot of them are not. And that is a direct result of the fact that you're hiring people without actually knowing what type of people that you need, which is a very, very real, in my opinion at the very least, and very serious problem within software development. So what you see is basically quite a lot of people who get paid quite a lot of money to make completely useless uh, Confluence documents or like diagrams or things like that. They're basically just throwing money at these people for doing something that provides very, let's say, debatable value. In some cases, you actually need them, and I will talk about that as well. But I want you to understand that in the root of your question is basically that why do you need a person doing something when the software team knows how to do it? And the answer is that you don't need that person in that scenario. But here's the thing that is important to know. There are situations where you actually need this individual, and the thing that I want to drive home with my little video here is that everybody is useful given the right circumstances. So as you may or may not have seen me talk about, say, Scrum Masters as an example, in my personal opinion, the role of a Scrum Master, depending on how you want to define it, is an individual that you can do without in the average software team, because going through the rituals and doing these daily things is not a very complicated thing. It doesn't require specialist knowledge and a whole salary to be paid to someone to facilitate meetings. But I have seen firsthand teams that actually need an individual like this, because the reasonable assumptions that I make are incorrect in that situation. And you may not think that that is like feasible, like possible or so forth, but I want you to remember, guys, you know those the cups where like it says it contains hot liquid, or like those warning labels saying that do not put your dog in a microwave or things like that. I want you to know that there are people who have literally done these things, and therefore there is a label for it. Or there's at least a person who told you that you have to put that there because someone might actually be stupid enough to do and go and do something like that. And people have done that. It's the same thing with Scrum Masters and architects and so forth and so forth. You have software teams where the compositions of the developers are, like an example would be, let's say that you're all doing, you have juniors in all the teams. and things don't really turn out so well, like they design poorly made systems or so forth and so forth. Like to you and me, it might be obvious that, well, then you should introduce a few seniors, but to another company, it might be that, all right, well, we're going to have some architects, because the circumstances of the people, like the organization, also dictates who you need. And so in many cases, as I've said, you hire architects because you think you need them. You don't need them, but that has to do with the fact that you don't actually understand what type of software team you have. That's the core problem. That's why these sort of things happen. And then you have, because as I've said before, guys, everybody has a reason to exist. Like everybody justifies their existence or their value in some way, but it really comes down to managers and people who are like sort of, it's like when we are we customers, it doesn't matter who you go to, which store or so forth, they will always have, most of the time, a product to sell you, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter necessarily if it's the perfect product for you or not. It's up to you to determine if the thing that they are offering is actually value building for you. And when, as I've said before, you have a situation like this where you don't really know what you're paying for and whether or not you need that thing, it becomes very tricky for you to determine whether or not you need an architect or a scrum master or a QA or a junior software developer or a senior software developer. Like, you don't actually know what you're buying, and you don't know the work that they're supposed to be doing, right? And how much value that is going to bring to your specific organization. So what I want you to take away from this is that, I will just go and say it, an architect, it doesn't matter if it's an architect or not, guys. They don't have any value whatsoever in an average company, because most companies don't necessarily care about the overall architecture of the entire system or things like that. There are tons of situations where I've been in meetings with people who are solution architects, low code specialists, like all these types of terms that you can imagine, guys, where someone is trying to sell their skill set. It's the same thing that the software developers are doing, guys. You're trying to market your skills, and in some, for us software developers, obviously we think that everything we do is very super important, but I can tell you for a fact, guys, there are more than a few projects where I have been in the conversation with some manager who thinks that they need a software developer to build something, and I realized that this person wants to allocate a whole software team and build like a production application with a full Kubernetes cluster, and the thing they're literally asking us to make is a UI that visualizes some data from some data sources. In essence, they're trying to build an Excel sheet or a Power BI application or like a dashboard. That's what they want. And the cost of having me and my coworkers do that is going to be measured in, let's just say, a lot of money. Whereas if they simply hired a single solution architect or some other person like a Power BI consultant, they could have that thing up and running for a fraction of that cost in no time at all. But they don't know that, so they hire us, or like they're trying to push this thing because they think that they need us. Same thing goes with architects and solution architects and all these sorts of titles, guys. People specialize in different things, and it comes down to that the consumer or the company that you're working for, they don't have a good understanding of what type of person do they need. Because as I've said, when you go and ask the consultancies and the agencies and whoever's going to sell you their skills, they're all going to have a solution for you. But at the end of the day, it's you as the consumer who has to sort of know whether or not the thing that they are offering is the thing that you need. Have a great day.